everyone. I'm Abigail, this is James, and welcome to another Two Kids interview.
Today we are joined by New York Times best-selling author Rosanne Parry.
Miss Parry has written the books The Turn of the Tide, Second Fiddle,
Written in stone, Heart of a Shepherd, Last of Name,
A Whale of the Wild, and the New York Times bestseller, A Wolf Called Wander.
Any day we would be thrilled to have Miss Parry on our show, but especially today.
Right, because today is a birthday of Miss Parry's brand new middle grade novel, A Horse Named Sky.
Happy book birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. We should have rehearsed this.
I know. There's the cover of the book. I don't have them in my hand at the moment, but yes, it is the book birthday of A Horse Named Sky. So very fun.
Well, congratulations on your new book.
And thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
Before anything else, tell us about the birthday book, A Horse Named Sky.
A Horse Named Sky is about a wild horse named Sky who lives in the Virginia Range in Nevada. When I was 8 years old, I totally wanted to be a Pony Express rider. That was my whole life plan. And so this is set in the time of the Pony Express in 1860. And so he leaves his family band and he is captured and he runs with the Pony Express for a time. And he learns a lot about freedom and all of what he's willing to fight for. So it was a lot of fun to research. Wild horses are really beautiful. They're really smart. And this is the book that I wrote during the pandemic. And so I was able to, fortunately, horses live far away from people usually, wild horses. And so I was able to take my little research van and go watch wild horses during the pandemic. And that was really, really nice. So I was grateful for it.
A number of your books has an animal as the main character, and we read the book from an animal's point of view.
Since you are a human person, isn't it hard from an animal's perspective?
It does take some research. It sure does. I try and learn everything that I can learn about what an animal understands about the world, right? And what is their family and social life like? And, what are they afraid of? And what do they love the most? And so I try and weave all of that into my story. So for example, when I was watching Wild Horses once, I saw a group of young bachelor stallions who were kind of off to the side of this larger group of stallions with their mares and their little babies, their foals. And so these teenage horses were like, they spend a lot of time practicing fighting because adult male horses fight a lot. And so they were like, first of all, they were like talking to each other. And then they were kicking dirt at each other. But the minute they like reared up and started actually punching, one of those stallions, because they were right next to like mothers and babies, one of those stallions just looked up from grazing and he like snorted at them, not even very loud, but they were like done fighting. like teenagers who'd been caught smoking behind the gym or something. They were like, what, us fight? No, we're all just grazing here. So it really told me a lot about how much respect in a horse society they have for those big males who are leading their bands. And he was like, no, we're not going to have any of that fighting, not near all these babies. You got to go somewhere else. And so they did just like that. They were done fighting. So that was one of the cool things that I learned by observing and by reading about horses and talking to people who work with horses. So that's the fun part for me, research. I really love that.
Sounds like a lot of research goes into your book. Can you give us an idea about how much?
Well, I probably read 20 or 30 books for every book that I write. And then I also often will talk to as many as a dozen people who have information that I'm looking for. So I was talking to historians about the Pony Express. I needed to learn some things about silver mining, which happened in Colorado or in Nevada at this time. I learned some things. I talked to a curator at the Paiute Museum at Pyramid Lake about the Paiute War, which happened at this time, and what the settlement of Nevada meant to the Paiute who lived there. So there's lots of people to talk to, and also just people who raise horses and train horses and rescue wild horses, all of that. People have lots of interesting things to say. I talked to a range specialist about what wild horses eat. You would think it would be easy. Horses eat grass, right? Actually, there are like 100 kinds of grass, and some they eat a lot of, and some they don't eat at all, and some they only eat in the winter, and some they only eat in the summer. I had no idea it was that complicated. So I do love talking to people about the animals that I'm writing about.
You seem to be a very outdoorsy person. How has that influenced you in your writing?
Well, I feel lucky to have grown up in Oregon, a place with lots of public land where I can camp and hike and ride my bike and ski and snowshoe. And there's lots of wild places in my state, and I am grateful for it. So my whole life I've been hiking and camping in these places. And most of the places in the book are places that my readers, if they wanted to, they could go and hike the places that Wanda ran, and they can paddle around in the waters where Vega and her brother Deneb were swimming, and they can there is, for example, there is a Pony Express trail for hikers that it follows the path that the Pony Express took back in 1860, and you can hike that path over the mountains in the Sierra Nevadas. I hiked that one summer, and it was great. So
In what ways have your children influenced you in your writing?
I am lucky to have 4 children, but not just 4 children. I have more than 40 nieces and nephews because I have a big family. So so there's always somebody the age of my reader in my life, and I'm so grateful for that, because when I talk to them and when I see them playing with their cousins, it helps me think about what my readers are interested in, what they're thinking about, what they're talking about. And I know lots and lots of young people are very, very passionate about the wilderness, and passionate about fighting climate change, and passionate about really being good stewards of the earth. And so I really want to make books that capitalize on that, that help people feel a connection to the wilderness, right? I'm lucky where I live, the wilderness is right there, but lots and lots of kids live in a city, and I want them to feel as connected to the wilderness as I do.
What is your process when putting a book together?
Do you decide the end before the middle?
Or do you put it together in order?
Oh, well, I usually, when I'm starting, I usually have some idea about my starting point and my ending point, right? And so then I have to go looking for trouble. This is the fun thing. Trouble is fun. The consequences of trouble in real life, not very fun. Maybe you've discovered this, right? But when you're writing a book, you can like explore all the ways my character can get into trouble without actually getting into trouble myself, which is great. So when I'm looking at a character, I'm like, what are the things that could be trouble for a horse? As it turns out, really the only predator of horses is a mountain lion. They're really the only animal that hunts them. And so I was like, oh, okay, so predation is one problem, but it's not the only problem. Do you know what's a bigger problem than that? You might even be able to guess. It's water, right? Just like humans, horses need to drink every day. So if their water is gone, or if their water is poisoned, they're in big trouble, more trouble than an attack by a cougar. Horses can survive an attack by a cougar. Actually, that's why they buck, is to throw a cougar off their back, right? That's where that bucking reflex comes from. But without water, they're in trouble, just like humans, right? So I think about like, what are the things that could be a problem for my character? What are the big problems? What are the smaller problems? Usually the smaller problems come earlier in the story, and then the bigger ones come toward the end, right? But then I make an order that I think will work. But then when I go back and revise, sometimes I change the order that things happen, right? Or sometimes I decide to shorten one thing up and lengthen another part, right? I have an editor who helps me with that, right? So she's like, this part is too confusing for me. Some more about this part, but this part here goes on too long. So a lot of it is like expanding some parts and making it shorter. And sometimes so I have a plan, but I try to stick too firmly to the plan because sometimes plans change.
Speaking of your editor, after you finish your first draft, how much do you revise a book?
It depends. Usually my editor and I go back and forth 3 or 4 times, right? Just to get the story right. But then also, so here's the thing, I am super bad at spelling and punctuation. I couldn't for sure tell you where the comma goes, right? So for that part, I have a copy editor that helps me get all the spelling and the punctuation, all the grammar things right. right? And all the continuity things, like did we spell everybody's name the same way through the whole story, right? All of those things. And so copy editing is something that we usually go through at least twice. And then even after the copy editing is done, then we go to the proofing and we make sure once it's all laid out on a page that there aren't any mistakes on the page. And also the art gets put in. And so we make sure like that the right art is on the right page, right? So the thing that's being described is about the picture that's on that page. So there's a lot of checking back and forth.
Rejection is a part of most authors' stories. Can you tell us about that part of your journey?
Well, sure. You know, A Wolf Called Wander, you mentioned that it was my bestseller by far, right? It has, I think it's sold, it's getting up there pretty close to 500,000 copies sold worldwide. So that's also all of its translations. That book that has done so well was rejected by more than 40 publishers in the United States. In fact, it was rejected so many times in the United States that my agent and I took it to other English-speaking countries. So Australia, Canada, England, New Zealand, South Africa. And we found a really terrific publisher in England who loved the book and wanted it to be illustrated. And she did a really terrific job. And so A Wolf Called Wander was initially published in England and later came over to the United States, right? It went on to do very well, but at the very beginning, and especially when people were just looking at my words without the pictures, you know, people were like, this is fabulous writing. We can't possibly publish it. It's, you know, it's not long enough. Children don't really like animals. Everybody had an excuse, but they just didn't have the vision for making an illustrated book. And once it was an illustrated book, it has been great ever since.
We've interviewed a number of authors who have had books banned in certain places.
That means in those places, kids don't have the same access to books that we have and may not be able to see themselves represented in books.
Can you give us your feelings on this?
Oh, I feel very strongly about this. Not only am I an author, I have been a teacher. It's very important to me as a teacher that my students have access to any book they choose to read. I also work at a bookstore. And it is vitally important at the bookstore that we can carry and get for our customers any book they choose to read. We don't ever force somebody to read a book they don't want to read. Everybody should decide for themselves, is this book right for me? Is this book not right for me, right? If a book is too scary for you, you should not read it, for example, right? But just because a book is too scary for me doesn't mean it's too scary for somebody else, right? And so I don't get to say, nobody else gets to read this book because I don't like it, right? We love many of the books in our bookshop. Some of the books in our bookshop, we don't like at all, but we don't have to like every book in the bookshop. They're there for other people who want that book because everybody gets to decide for themselves. That's the foundation of intellectual freedom in this country, right? It is the First Amendment for a reason.
What writer has had the most influence on you?
Oh gosh, I would say one of the things that I love about living in Portland, Oregon, is that there are many, many wonderful writers in Portland, Oregon. One of them that's had a big influence on me and my career is Ursula Le Guin, who wrote The Wizard of Earthsea and many, many other books. She is also a best-selling author. She has won lots and lots of book prizes, but she's also kind, thoughtful, and has been working on this intellectual freedom fight for a very long time.
What advice do you have for young people who want to write?
Oh, I would say try lots and lots of things. Lots of things, right? Because you may think you want to write one kind of thing and then you try it and you go, oh, actually, that is not as fun as I thought it was. Or you might have a story idea that seems great and then you get into it and go, ooh, I'm really stuck. So if you find that you're stuck with something or you don't love it as much as you used to, set it aside, someplace where you can find it again, right? Maybe back up your computer or have a box where you keep the written things, but save your writing because something that isn't working for you right now might work great for you later, right? And I think you only really find what's the best kind of writing for you by trying a bunch of things, right? So
that's big advice.
Yeah.
Do you also have a smaller tip for something you do when you are writing
that maybe a lot of people don't?
Oh, well, one thing that I've learned when I was younger, I felt like I was a bad writer because I was a bad speller, right? And so I'd be like, ugh, and I'd come to the word that I couldn't spell and think, is that the right word? And I'd get like stuck and fret about it, and then wouldn't get things accomplished. So what I do is I either like if I'm typing on the computer, I'll highlight that word so that I can come back to it and check it later. Or if I'm writing in, I might put like a sticky note or circle it or something, and then just keep going. Like make my best guess about how to spell that word. If I'm not sure if something's right, I just highlight it so I can come back to it, and then I keep going so I don't lose my train of thought. Right. So so that really helped me get over that feeling like because I'm bad at spelling, I'm bad at writing. Here's the thing. The making things up part is the really important part, right? The making things up part is the part that nobody else can help you with, right? The spelling, the punctuation, all that other stuff, other people can help you with it, and other people will, right? But the making things up part, that's the heart of writing, and that's what you really need to get good at. So trying that has helped me not get too hung up on not being good at spelling.
We understand that you have been on a research trip in the Eagle Cap Wilderness. Can you tell us about the project you were there to research?
I've been working on another book about wolves that will come out in the spring, and it's called The Wolf Effect. And I wanted to take a look at a wolf habitat, and so I did some hiking in the mountains. Hell's Canyon is near the Eagle Cap Wilderness, and it is the deepest canyon in the United States. It is deeper than the Grand Canyon, but it is not crowded at all. When we went to the edge of the Hell's Canyon, when we got there, we had not seen another human being for hours. We camped at the edge of the canyon overnight. We did not see a single person all night long. The next morning, still no people. Hours and hours later, no people at all. So that's a very different experience than going to the Grand Canyon, which is one of the most visited and beautiful national parks, right? Nothing against the Grand Canyon, but it's a busy, busy place. Hell's Canyon is deeper than the Grand Canyon and very, very empty wilderness. So that was pretty awesome, actually.
Finally, it's time for our Turbo 10.
10 rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay. Number 1. What is your favorite phrase to use?
My favorite phrase. Oh, you know, in A Horse Named Sky, the horses had a wish for each other that they said sometimes, and it is wind run beside you always, which is like a wish they have for each other when they say goodbye.
No.
Speaking of wind.
Number 2. What is one subject you'd love to learn more about?
Gosh, you know, I wish I knew. And when I was on this trip looking at this canyon and all this geology, I was like, gosh, I wish I knew more about the geology of North America. That would be pretty cool.
Number 3. What is your go-to snack food?
Oh, my go-to snack food. I am so lucky in this big yard of mine. There are many, many fruit trees. Oh, there's my research mobile. We have apple trees and pear trees. At the moment, we have lots of blackberries. So my favorite thing is to pick fruit in my yard while I'm working, because I often work outside.
Number 4. What was your favorite book growing up?
My favorite book. I had many favorites, but one that I really loved was by Ursula Le Guin, who became such a mentor to me. And it was called The Wizard of Earthsea. It's kind of the original A Boy Goes to Wizard School book, and it's really good.
Number 5. If you could teleport somewhere right now, where would you go?
If I could teleport somewhere, oh, gosh, so many places. Wow. I would probably, golly, I can think of 100 places I want to go in my lifetime. Do you know what I would really love to do in my lifetime? I would love to go to every national park in the United States. So I would teleport myself to the start of that journey.
Number 6. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
If I could have a superpower, my superpower would be to heal the earth.
Number 7. What was your favorite cartoon as a kid?
Oh, gosh, there were so many good ones, but I love the Roadrunner. It's so funny.
Number 8. What was your favorite rainy day activity?
My favorite outdoor rainy day thing is to just walk around in the rain and jump in puddles. And my favorite indoor thing is reading.
Number 9. If you could have any 3 dinner guests, who would they be?
Oh, 3 dinner guests. Gosh, you know, this is maybe cheating a little bit, but there are 2 Oregon authors who have died in recent years that I would love to see again at dinner. Ursula Le Guin and Brian Doyle would be 2 of them.
And the third one?
Oh, the third one. Gosh. I'm fortunate enough to have a really terrific editor, Virginia Duncan, so I would invite her too.
Number 10. What was the best piece of advice you were ever given?
Best piece of advice I was ever given? Gosh. Choose kindness. Right? Yeah, choosing kindness. There is almost always a kind choice to make. So, yeah.
You were awesome. Thank you so much for doing that.
And thank you so much for spending this time with us.
We can't wait to read your future books.
Thank you so much, guys. It was really great to talk to you. See you later.
Bye.